So we started the recording. Okay, you're live on
Yeah.
Channel 4. Don't swear. It's going to be me if anyone's going to swear. We know that anyway. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the September Power Platform Virtual Happy Hour. Open brackets between two ferns, close brackets, and tonight. Pretty excited to have Oleksandr and Diana joining us to talk about the pro dev side of Power Platform, which is something that we probably don't touch on anywhere near enough, I would say. Without further talking about touching, perhaps you guys could give us a quick intro about yourselves and
On
your experience.
touching, let's do the code of conduct first, and then.
Oh, code of conduct. Sorry, code of conduct, everybody. And code of conduct. I think anybody that's been here before already knows that it's a fairly open forum and it's pretty relaxed. But we do like you to be aware and friendly and patient of other people, and to be welcoming and respectful and open to all viewpoints and all questions. Remember, there are no stupid questions, only the one you didn't ask. All questions are useful, and all questions help someone to learn something. Please be kind and understanding of differences, and treat others as you would wish to be treated yourself, I think. And if you hear of anybody doing or saying anything that you think is untoward, then feel free to complain to me, or complain to Chris or Carl or Lee if it was me that was being untoward, which again is the most likely scenario. So I would love for Diana and Oleksandr to give us a quick rundown of their experience, both as devs and in the Power Platform, and maybe tell us one fun fact about themselves. So ladies first. Diana, would you like to go first?
Okay, I was afraid of that. It's always
Sorry.
that.
Sorry.
Okay, so my name is Diana Birkelbach. I started to work with Dynamics or CRM from the early version 1.2, and started to work with PCF from the beginning. Fall in love with that. Started to write some blogs, and I spend a lot of time in the Power Apps community forum. I'm an astronaut there, and yeah, that's the fun fact. Okay, I'm actually coming from Romania, and actually 30 kilometers from Dracula castle. Okay, so
That's very exciting. That's very, very, so Transylvania, is it?
yes, right.
Right. I used to work with I say work with in the loosest possible sense. We worked in the same building. She was from Transylvania. And she said it's beautiful, like the countryside. There's like so much roaming countryside and hills and mountains and stuff. I'd love to go there, actually. So thank you. Sorry, I mispronounced your name. Thank you, Diana. That was lovely. Oleksandr, have I mispronounced your name as well?
Well, my name can be pronounced as you did, or as in Ukrainian, Oleksandr. It doesn't matter. It's basically the same thing. So whichever fits you matter. So hi everyone. My name is Oleksandr, and I'm originally from Ukraine, but now I live and work in Poland. I started working with Dynamics in 2016, and this year I was granted Microsoft MVP status. I started working with PCF from the beginning. But then my focus mostly shifted to portals, and now it's kind of my main thing. That's what I'm doing. Fun fact about myself, I'm in love with dancing. I really love dancing, and I was doing dances since I was 5 years old and doing them professionally before I got to university. Yeah, that was my passion and still is. That's my blog's called Dancing with CRM,
I love that. So, like, what type of dancing is it? Like classical? I don't know what types of dancing.
So it's ballroom dancing. So it's ballroom dancing. Yes. So it's classical stuff, but also we were doing show programs. So variety on classical dances, but in show format, like there was like up to 8 bars at the same time and doing all kind of stuff. It was awesome.
Like the foxtrot and the waltz and that kind of thing.
Yeah, tango and stuff like that. That's
very cool. I like it. Might have to, when I meet you, you'll have to take me for a week. I can't dance. Don't make me do anything. It's awful. So I just wanted to kick off tonight's discussion or open forum by saying Chris and myself and Keith Watling, I think, and maybe somebody else, was it you, Carl, went on one of the Microsoft sessions on build, and we were talking about the difference between citizen developers and professional developers, because we know that Microsoft push the low code, no code citizen developer angle, which is right, which is good, and it's fun, and it gets people involved in technology that perhaps wouldn't get involved in technology or didn't think that they could get involved in technology. But the point that we were making on our talk was that without the pro dev, the citizen developer cannot exist. And the examples we used is if I go and buy a Lego Millennium Falcon, I can build, I'm kidding myself that I'm building a Millennium Falcon, right? But I haven't machined parts for guns and lights and stuff. Somebody else did that. Somebody that had a plastic injection molding plant actually made these very specific units and building blocks to enable me to kid myself that I'm building a Millennium Falcon. Likewise, Keith said, if he buys a house and he does it up and he redoes the plumbing, he redoes the plumbing, but he doesn't make the toilet and he doesn't make the pipes and everything that he uses to be able to do that. So, like, you know, the professional developer it walks so that everybody else can run, right? I think is probably the way that I would describe it. Like, how do you, as professional developers, what are your thoughts about the rise of the citizen developer? What do you think are the pros and cons? You know, what are the positives? What are the negatives?
Well, I completely agree with you that, you know, pro developers is kind of building the building blocks, and sometimes it gets overshadowed when you have like thousands of shiny new building blocks. It's kind of overshadows the people who build them, and you don't fully understand that, you know, there's somebody who's crafting them. And it's fully applicable to the Power Platform itself. You know, we can do so much more right now that we were not capable before, like just with the Power Automate. Right? Previously, when you need to fetch some data from related entity in the workflow, it was always custom workflow activity, right? You need somebody who builds it with code. And now you can just, okay, I have Power Automate, right? I can do it myself. And it's good. There is nothing bad in that. But now we also have much time to build much more complex things, like with plugin and deep dive. But right now, those things are overshadowed. I think right now, the main problem is that we can do it with low code, but we are not considering should we. Like, some things are just easier, faster, and more scalable to build with code than do it with low code and then just support it and extend it. So, you know, there's always need to be some balance about it.
Cool. Diana?
So from my side, I love the aspects of being able to be more productive and being able to, for instance, to use the connectors. If I had to write a connector to SIP or something else in the past, I would just run away because it's very complicated. So you just don't want to do it. And also, I appreciate what the Power Platform Solar Low Code is bringing to us in terms of not having to do code for over and over again for the same action. So you just have to copy a record and you have to write a plugin and take time, and it's actually boring if you do. It's actually the same again. But on the other side, you have to learn the low code because it's not something you just know. It's something you have to learn. And for me, citizen developers are pros in writing low code. And there are even some specializations there, because some of them are better in writing flows. The other one are better in making custom making Canvas apps. So from this point of view, I think also the citizen developer has to know all the aspects of development, and they have to know the best practices and to know the architecture, the performance to be able to make ALM and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's a good point. And also, Sravani agreed, like low code is still code. And I think, you know, when I first went through like an app in a day or Power Automate in a day or something like that, I was like, well, this is great. And I've just built an app to compare one laptop with another or whatever. I can't even remember what the code they give, the data they give you is. I'm sure it's laptops. But then when you try and use it in an environment, it's totally different. And then I found out that like actually trying to get to one thing to communicate with another, to pull data through, to be able to update data and all that kind of update data in the back end is where you learn, right? That's where the skill of it is. And I think the in a day workshops are great for showing people that this can be accessible, but that's literally, it's scratching the surface of what you need to do. Going back to something you said, Oleksandr, you said like just because you could doesn't mean you should. Have you got some examples of something that is definitely better not done in a low code fashion?
It's kind of complicated question because it's always depends on the situation. Like, you know, in the context of specific situation, creating full Canvas app and just embed it into the model-driven app is much more easier than go with the PCF control, like because they can do similar things in some situations. And in some situation, you know, you can all be done with code, like just PCF. They are basically building blocks, right? You cannot go with low code with that one. You just need to build it from scratch. Of course, there is a custom component in Canvas apps that you can build from, again, from the building blocks you already have, but they are not as flexible. So, you know, it's, again, you need to see it in concrete situation.
Yeah. What about you, Diana? Do you have anything to add on that? You're on mute.
Sorry, I did it again.
We all do. We all do.
Yeah, so it's getting more complicated to decide where to start because from the beginning you think it's very easy to make it with low code, and you learn with the time that it's we're gonna be complicated, and you need to have that experience to know when to start and where when to just go to a pro code and have a real code, and it depends on so many aspects because we have the backend. A lot of people doesn't think about them when they start to make, for instance, a Canvas app, and they have to think, where's the data? How can I bring it together? And it's a lot about architecture and fusion teams. But I'm not very sure if the fusion teams are working very well right now, because in the beginning there was a split. Microsoft said you don't need a developer to write Canvas apps, and it was kind of making some friction. So the pro devs was hurt because they said we're not gonna need them, and now we have to find together because there are also skills from the citizens, so from the low code developers, that we need to consider for making good application, and also to have a good designer, a UI designer. It's very important,
Right.
and also the data and so on.
Yeah, and the user experience thing, having seen some apps that have been developed by non-developers, like they do the job. Like they do the job. There's two problems that I see fairly often with that. Is one, that they do the job, but actually it's very clunky and it's not doing the job in a way somebody who was trying to do what the app does would use it, right? Which is the very definition of bad user experience. The other thing I see is this. It feels like if an app is business critical, it just doesn't. like there's that feel of some of the Canvas apps, particularly I think more so than model-driven apps, that like they could just fall over at any point, like or something might just fail, and nobody knows why. And I think those are the problems. I think those are the problems that I, as a non-developer, come across and I struggle with, and I struggle to overcome, because I don't have that experience. I don't have the experience of knowing, like, you know, if you don't build this part of it correctly, then this other part of it's always going to fall over. And I don't think you can ever do away entirely with that experiential element of building things, that like a pro dev will have seen this type of thing happen over and over again, or will have the knowledge to know that if something isn't quite right in the back end, then it's going to go wrong in the front end. I wouldn't know that. So, you know, I'm probably just doing real rookie error. I'm obviously doing rookie errors because I'm a rookie, but Chris.
That's where, just to jump in, that's where integrations probably come into it as well, right? You can use Power Automate to create some integrations and things, but if you're talking about business important, business critical applications, like the retry policies, the catching failures, the making sure things are kept in sync, up to date, that you know about when things are going wrong, running that at scale in Power Automate at the moment is not, it's just not reasonable. So that's where sort of pro code comes in very heavily as well, I think, personally.
Chris, hand up.
I feel like this exact scenario goes back to the discussions we all have about things like data integration. Lee actually put it perfectly. It's pretty much exactly what I was going to say. But like, you don't know what you don't know. Okay, so here's the feeling, right? I detest the term citizen development. I think it's the dumbest thing Microsoft ever came out with, because you're being exclusive to somebody that doesn't write code, right? So all of a sudden, people that write code are completely excluded from the Power Platform, which is bullshit, right? So let's just get that on the table. It's maker enablement. That's what it is, right? Whether you build the Lego bricks yourself or you use the Lego bricks to build something else, that's what it is. But like, so going to the data conversation, right? I'm awesome at Dataverse. I love Dataverse. It kicks ass. But then I go chat to a modern workplace person who's terrified of Dataverse. And you don't know what you don't know. And then you go to somebody who loves SQL, and then moving on to a SharePoint list, you don't know what you don't know, and each has its use case. And for me, it's like, please, you know, Diana, Oleksandr, correct me if I'm wrong, but like in my brain, because I don't write code, okay, I'm not scared of it. Like I love reading code. I think it's cool. But because I don't know how to write it, I've got this natural like apprehension to it, because I'm going, oh crap, like if I look at what Lee builds sometimes, I'm all, oh man, this dude is just another level of crazy good. But then I can achieve certain things. But I think the apprehension around code is that it's like really difficult. Okay, so the question I want to ask you, and I always have like long spiel before I ask a question, really bad.
So it feels like a loaded question already. Like.
Yeah, it always, no, because I'm setting you up. I want you to think about it, right? I want you to think about like why I would ask this. So from your perspective, I think this is a double-barreled question. Number one, is code scary, right? And number two, if you are a absolute noob, right? And I know there's like hundreds of languages and loads of people get excited about it. I don't know all the languages. But if you're a noob, right, and you're scared of code, what's the best way to break that barrier down? What would you guys say? And maybe Diana, do you want to give it a crack? Either one of you.
Okay. I can. So I would say one thing that code might look scary, but you need to understand that behind the code, there's always algorithm and logic. Like, there is nothing impossible. You just need to understand how exactly processor goes in and takes the data from the memory and stuff like that. You don't need to understand that in the beginning. You just need to understand the logic and the algorithm. And then the syntax is pretty easy. And if you understand the basic logic, because the logic is always the same. It doesn't matter what languages are you working with. The logic is always the same. So if you master the logic, if you understand the basic algorithm, you can start with any language. And, you know, keep it up and just understand what this language brings to the tables, what its benefits, what its downsides, etc. So, you know, if you're scared of the code, just look at the basic diagrams. I really love, like back in school when we learned Pascal, there was these flowchart diagrams of the logic. And based on those flowcharts, you know, it's quite easy to visualize and understand how the code will work and how you could write it. So, you know, if you're scary of a lot of words and different things, don't be. It's not that bad. Just learn the logic.
Cool.
I think you have to learn a few principles, and after that, it's not scary at all. So I've made quite a few languages since I started with a Fortran in the old days. But I think I've told my daughter, if you like to make puzzles, then you can like to make programming. It's not that bad. You just have to get started, and after that, it's okay. And the second question was, if you want to learn programming, what would be the best place to start? A low code, I think it could be a good place to start, because you have to think about this events and how the data is going, and how the debugging process is working. Could be a good idea to start that way. My daughter actually started with Scratch, so it's something similar, just not in the business area.
I've got to agree with that, Diana. I think the whole low code as a tool to learn logic and how things knit together is a great way, because it's visual, right? They're not worried about colons, they're not worried about all the little bits and pieces, but those logic is the fundamentals for any. And I think that's really a good point that you're making, that we should be using it as an educational tool a lot of the time.
That's true. That's true. And as the time goes on, you will understand when you make mistakes, because it's hidden from you. You are not aware what kind of requests are going in the background when you make a Canvas app. You are not very sure what's happening in the background and what's the best thing to do. And you have the tools and you think, I can do it. And of course you can do it. You can make everything. But you will learn with the time what's the best place where to say, okay, when I go this way, I'm gonna push the limits. And there would be the place where a pro dev could come and make the life easier and save a lot of requests and make the application much faster.
Yeah, like I totally get that, and I think, like, for somebody like myself, I never went down a coding route. I didn't have a technical background in that respect. Well, I mean, if you count typing in programs from my computer magazine in the 80s into my BBCB, then yeah, I think that's what put me off. I was sitting down with a ruler and trying to type all of that stuff in. But like, it's like you say, it's about understanding the logic structures more than that. And like, if you understand like what happens in the background when you write something, then it all starts to make more sense, right? I'm trying to think of a really good analogy and I can't, but I might come up with one before the end of it. What would you say, like, as a pro dev, either one of you, what would you say is the one thing that you enjoy doing the most inside of Power Platform, and the one thing that you find you get the most satisfaction from?
That's a tough question. I think I enjoy the process, and it's the best when it's working, when I find the bug.
Right.
So, but it makes fun to search for the problem too, so, and to understand the principles and to make it work, to rule it.
Yeah, Oleksandr?
Yeah, I agree with Diana. So things that make it work, it's so enjoyable. And also what I like about Power Platform is that despite I love code, despite I love, writing programs and stuff like that, I can solve the problem without writing a single line of code. And I love to switch between those because, sometimes you want to write code, sometimes you don't. And because you have so wide variety of tools, you can do, both in most cases. So it's just the possibility to choose whatever tool fits and whatever you would like to use. So I like this freedom of choice.
And do you know, that strikes me as like a massive similarity between the pro dev and the not pro dev, right? Because one of the things I find satisfying is starting with an idea of like, right, this is a process that I want to make work, and then making something and then hitting the button and seeing it work. Like if it's something in Power Automate and seeing it work, the satisfaction of going, I've solved a problem. Or like you said, Diana, I also really enjoy it when it doesn't work and you're trying to figure out where it's gone wrong. And I think most people probably enjoy that element, whether they're a pro dev or not, is like the element of like creating something that works and solves a problem, or the actual problem solving itself, right? Chris, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, you may have already asked this while I was shouting at children and trying to deal with brushing teeth and all sorts of other horrible things I can't talk about on the call right now. So one of the things that when I was at Microsoft, probably about like half a year ago, whatever it was, one of the things we kept on getting asked is that when Microsoft were on their citizen development spree and forgetting about people that actually write code, one of the things we kept on getting asked is that, like, in the partner channel and actually in the technical channel, Power Platform is massive. It spans across like Azure, M365, Dynamics. It's not a tool that fits into any one of those brackets. And people keep on asking, what is the best way to introduce developers into the platform? Like, PCFs are cool. Everyone loves a PCF, right? But what else, as people, like, what else do you use code a lot for? I mean, there's loads of things, right? So they're not PCFs. Are there any other development introductory points into the Power Platform from a custom code perspective?
Well, I would say for me, one of the entry points was custom workflow activity. So, you know, it's simple, reusable piece of code that you just write and you can use in different workflows and somebody else can use. Usually they were not so complicated. So, you know, it's just one query or two. So not hard thing to write. And it was interesting to see it work. And yeah, so that was, I would say it's still a good entry point, although I'm not writing them as much as I used to, but they are still useful in certain scenarios.
Cool.
I would shout out Dataverse at that point as well, Chris. Sorry to jump in. Like, if you take the Microsoft infamous Dataverse slide that kind of keeps exploding out on all the stuff it does, developers don't really want to generally be setting up SQL databases, writing the standard CRUD APIs, working on the like boring security stuff that sits around it. You show them Dataverse that they've got all that stuff like set up, ready to go, and they can just jump on the cool things and really, even if they're writing custom apps over the top, even if they're writing mobile apps over the top of it that connect in, like showing plugins and stuff like that so that they can really mold the APIs to do what they need to, then virtual entities so they can grab in their other parts of data from their other systems, and then they've got a common data service, which would have been a good name for it, by the way. Then
all right, don't get political.
Sorry, moving on.
Oh.
But like, it's such a good tool for pro devs. Irrelevant even if you're a mobile dev and you want to just land a data before, that's for me is the way in for pro devs.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've been trying to find the point, because, you know, everything this is, and goes back to your point about using Flow for certain things. You know, so I was talking to people about building out integration layers using you know, custom development and, you know, development tools like Data Factory and et cetera, and people are like, yeah, but I've got Power Automate. I'm like, no, dude, Power Automate's not for integration. At best, it's for data interfacing at maximum, right? So, like, I think maybe what we should do, someone maybe on this call, pick up something in the Power Platform and say, hey, this is where citizen devs, I'm using the term now because I do need to make the point difference, and this is where pro developers come in, and where's the line? Because I genuinely don't think that anyone has been able to ever make the correlation or make the line, what will make a clear distinction. I personally haven't seen it. If anyone else has, I'm welcome to feedback.
Why does that have to be a distinction?
It does, because when you're looking at pro developers need to find where their expertise lie best in the platform, and therefore they need to identify from a niche perspective. Look at apps and infra, right? Apps and infra are the least likely users of the Power Platform, but the most highly skilled from a development perspective. So you want to give them something to identify with. It's the same as citizen devs. You want to bring a new breed of people into the system, give them technology that they identify with first, and then grow them in. That's why I think it's important to make the difference in some worlds, but not in our world necessarily. Does that make sense? I hope it does.
I guess so, yeah. I think, like, also, I still feel like, as somebody who's not a pro dev, I still feel like I actually really can't achieve that much without learning how to code on Power Platform. Like, I just can't. Like, even building something, I built something really simple for a friend of mine who has a small tutoring business, and even then I was relying on SharePoint lists and Power Automate, and like, if we'd had budget, I would have got someone to build something much more complex for them. But the situation is that if you're not a coder, you do get to a point very, very quickly where you realize that without understanding code or without knowing code, you can only go so far. And whilst I just thanks, Carl. Whilst I am open to learning, and I absolutely will learn. And I think that the Power Platform is it's a great way of somebody who has functional knowledge of an area to build something that can help them to do their job, right? But it's only going to be a surface thing. I really don't think without the pro developers that it goes anywhere. To change tack a little bit, I want to talk about things like portals, because that's something that, like, within the Power Platform and within the Power App space, like, there's no way somebody with no coding experience is going to go near something like that, right? Am I right in saying that? Because that's how I feel about it.
Well, not really, especially when Microsoft introduced the new Maker portal for Portal.
Yeah.
When you basically can drag and drop things, a lot of people starting to build them and are less afraid of using them, which is, I think, really good thing, because it's a powerful tool. But again, if you want to break from standard design or break away from I would say a bit restricted logic that is available out of the box, then you need code, and you need, you do need to know the code, because just switching some things up can be easy, like just write a line, find a line of JavaScript codes that do it for you. But in a lot of cases, it's not easy. And I really like that Microsoft understands a lot of things and trying to also extend it to not just low code, but also pro devs regarding portals. Like when they introduced Web API, it was one of the most requested features that everyone was waiting for so long, because you're in the portal, you would like to retrieve the data in some custom list, like not standard ones that provided by Microsoft. And there's no way to do it. Like, there is just no tools for you to do it. Like, there was a hacky ways that we were using and we still using, but that was why it was so requested, and they extended it. They allowed like CLI. When CLI was introduced for the portals, I was really happy, because finally source controls, things are coming, because before that, portals and source control was just two different worlds, which was really traumatizing experience, to be honest. But now, it's all coming together, not fully, but more and more.
Like, I get what you're saying, because for me, the portals thing looked a bit, the way I liken it is, if I wanted to build a website for my business and I go, oh, I'm going to use Squarespace, which is great if my business is selling wax melts and like hand stitched handbags and stuff like that, and I just want to post pictures of them and then people click on it and buy it. But that's not what I want to do. So I feel like you have, like you said, you've got like a really narrow frame of reference of what you can actually do with the stuff that's there, which, I mean, does it fit anybody particularly well? I would say probably not. I'm sorry, I have to open the door, so I might die from heat stroke. It's so hot in here. What about you, Diana?
Well, I'm not that much into portals. I just made my first one a few months ago, as I tried my PCF layer, and but I was excited as I saw that it works, because the way I understand the portals, they are running on a server, and it was possible to use only client script and to make a control there, and it was exciting, and it worked. That was great, but I don't have that much experience in that area.
Fair enough. What are the like, as pro developers, what are the things that you love most? What are the things that you enjoy doing the most? I mean, I know that sounds like the same question I asked earlier, but like, what are the specific tools or components inside the Power Platform that you think are best, like you get the most bang for your buck kind of thing?
So from my side, I enjoy making PCFs. Because I made a lot of front-end development, and was exactly the point where Microsoft gave us the possibility to integrate in the platform. And the HTML web resource was just like something, okay, you have your playground and do what you want, but you have to work a lot to make it work. And now the PCF are integrated in the platform. And that's why I love that that much. And as I saw that in the Canvas apps, you can use them too. And now in the custom pages, that's real power. And as I said, I like making I like producing something, and the most of them I see in the front end. So that's why that's the best part for me.
Cool. What about you, Oleksandr?
Well, for me, it's kind of two things. So I really like to write PCF as Diana, because, you know, being able to build something visual that can be extended and you can see it immediate, you know, it's beautiful, it's there, you build it, you see it, it's great. But also I really like to write plugins, if applicable, like to more complex logic, to do some things that need to be done real time or something more complicated, and thinking about how it can be done the most optimized way possible and the most scalable way possible, because sometimes you need to understand that, you know, the problems that you're solving right now might be just a subsample of the problems that will come. You need to understand that, but at the same time, you need to understand that you don't need to over-engineer, because sometimes as a developer, I like to code, and sometimes I get carried away with it. So I sometimes, you know, it's this feeling that I need to solve every problem possible, even though they might never come, but I need to solve them. So it's kind of the feeling of a balance. When you did job, it works, and you understand that, you know, it will solve a couple of problems that yet to come, but it's not super complicated beast that nobody will understand. So yeah.
Right, and that's a good point, because I have used more than my fair share of overly engineered systems, or systems that have got something in where the guy that made it will show you, but it does this thing, and I go, great, like, why do I need that? And it's something super clever that happens in the background that I'm supposed to appreciate, that it's amazing that this happens at the touch of a button, but like, it makes absolutely zero difference to me. You know, and I think there has to be such a delicate balance between, again, it's user experience, right? A lot of it comes down to user experience. I know Sancho, I don't know if Sancho's on the call, but he's a big one for user experience, as in, you know, it's great if what you've built does something super clever, but actually, how is the experience of the user that's going to try and use it? And he built that the design templates as well, or the way of designing, putting the same theme over Power Apps, which everybody was doing manually. And like, that's the stuff that I find amazing, you know, that I will never have the knowledge to do. Well, never say never, but I don't have the knowledge to do. I could look at a problem and say, yeah, that needs a solution. But like, you know, he came up with a solution. And I think that is always the awe-striking moment for me when I speak to anybody who's a developer, is that they can make something happen. And you can have all of these Power Platform tools at your disposal. But if you're someone like me, it feels like you're tantalizingly close to being able to do whatever you want, but actually you just can't quite get there, right? Talking about custom page, you mentioned custom pages, Diana. Do you want to talk a bit more about what you love there?
The custom pages bring us the power of Canvas app inside the model-driven apps, and that's something we was waiting for the model-driven apps, because when you make canvas apps, you have to build everything from the beginning, so from the scratch. When you start with model-driven apps, you have a lot that's provided by the platform, but there are some places they are missing there. And when you start with custom pages now, you are able to combine everything, because everything is a PCF. If it's a custom PCF or it's one from the out of the box, you can combine everything there using low code, and that's fantastic. I really love the power of what we can create now with custom pages. And I'm looking forward, because I think right now it's not everything there. It's still a lot to come that we cannot see right now. But I'm sure that will be a revolution in the model-driven apps.
Right. Oleksandr? Has he gone?
Oh, no, I'm here. Yeah,
oh, sorry, he just disappeared for a second there. Yeah, what about you?
Well, I didn't play that much with custom pages, to be honest. I just try them out as soon as they appear, and that's it. But I really like what the future holds for them, because that was a common problem, I would say, to fit something from a canvas world to model-driven. Like, you could embed a canvas page, but it was, not fully sufficient. And now you can extend your model-driven app in more interesting ways. And especially as you can use PCFs that are like full page PCF or custom page. That's awesome. That's a lot of things that we always wanted, because experience matters, and now we can extend it.
Yeah. What do you think has been like the best thing? What do you think is the best thing you've ever seen built in, say, Power Apps?
I think Flappy Bird in Canvas apps.
Yes, that was awesome. In fact, did we? Awesome. Yeah, we had that on here, didn't we?
We had Lemmings as well, didn't we? The Scott Duros Lemmings.
And Pac-Man.
And Pac-Man, yeah.
Yeah, Chris.
There we go. So I've got a bit of a stirring question. Okay. So when we chat to people around Power Platform, a lot of the reason that they take up the platform is obviously low code, no code, because they believe that writing custom code generates technical debt, right? So now here's the thing. So you both go into a customer, you build a really kick-ass solution using custom code, and then holy smokes, just like Captain Marvel, you gain superpowers and you have to fly to another planet to go and fight evil. Okay. You've left this mountain of code at a customer, right? Number one, what's your answer to that statement around technical debt? So is writing custom code creating technical debt? And number two, are there ways to mitigate that? So are there ways to get the rest of the organization brought into what you're doing without having to over-educate them in every single, statement that you write or function that you write? So that's my question.
Controversial.
Well, I would say that technical debt is just a part of development. It will always exist. It not necessarily need to be a custom development. You can have a technical debt even with standard solution. Power Automate, they replaced connector. Okay, you need to replace it. It's already technical debt, so you don't need to be afraid of it, because it will always be part of your development. At the same time, you need to think about it, especially if you build some custom code, you need to document it. And there's different ways to do it. I will not go into it because everyone has their own preferences, just in code, separate documents, etc. It just needs to be understandable, not just the code, but documentation around the code. And the people who will come, obviously, they will never see your solution, but they see your code, they have a documentation, and then they can keep up with it, they can modify it, and that's just part of what's being developed, and just in general, a part of creating something is.
So generally, you should write code only when it's necessary. If you can solve the problem with low code, it's usually no reason to make the coding. Maybe you will the technical debt, and it's in the from the aspect that you're gonna need somebody that understand that, because you have the same problem with low code, but I think it's easier to find somebody that can understand that than to find somebody that can understand the code that a pro dev have written. But that's the point where I think the custom pages are really helping in this, because you are not forced to write a whole application. You are not forced to write everything in one piece, because you can make some small pieces and bring them together, and everybody can use low code and make the changes that you need in that place.
And actually, so that's a really good response, because I love both of those, and I wanted to kind of draw the answer out that, like, so custom code doesn't mean technical debt at all. It's how you look after the solution. And actually, like I put it in the chat, if I told you, if I could go into detail about some of the Canvas apps I've seen that I promise you now desperately needed to be model driven, or actually just written in React, quite frankly, they're horrible, right? And that's technical debt. And let me explain something. In Canvas apps, managing those PowerFX statements is literally impossible. Okay, at least with custom code, you got check in, check out, and all that kind of thing. So, like, that's the first thing. The other thing that I kind of wanted to ask you guys both, and it's more, this might be a random question, but what we're seeing now in a lot of organizations and actually in the community is this whole concept of like custom development as a microservice. So what's happening in organizations is that custom devs are being used to generate these like pre-built blocks of IP, and not just PCFs, like other things. So as an example, a great example, Diana, was that custom page that you mentioned, right? Stuff that gets reused constantly in the business over and over again, but that gets managed properly. Is that, and not like, and again, not PCF, because we know what PCFs are, but are you seeing that type of thing happening in what you're being asked to do? Is that something that comes up over and over again as like reusable blocks of code? It's a hard question, I know.
Actually, we did that from the beginning, because, for instance, we made some kind of generic plugin. We didn't want to write for everything a plugin, and that was in on-premise times. We have access to SQL, so we write the configuration of the plugin using SQL. That was one way, because we had a generic edit grid. We tried to solve everything that we can reuse it over and over again. And I don't think now it's something new. It's just the platform. It's offering much more.
Good response. I think that's great, and I think a lot of time we miss that because we go and chat to people, and you have somebody that's built a block of code or a snippet where they use that, and then it's like a base class library, so to speak. I mean, remember those bad boys back in NAM? You like have this concept of reutilizing classes based on whatever over and over again, and then ultimately at the end of the day that becomes your library. And that's effectively what's happening as a standard now today. But back in NAM, that never used to be the case. So there must be like an orchestration layer built on top of that now again, where people are reusing those content blocks again and again. And when I go to organizations, I keep on seeing people rebuilding things. So I feel like it's a code toolkit, like the XRM toolbox, just one layer lower sort of thing.
When people do like when proper devs do, when actual devs, not pretend devs do proper coding, right? Don't you like have all of your annotations in there and your notes, so that like if somebody has to come and try and pick something out of it?
Controversial topic.
Oh, have I kicked a hornet's nest there? I thought that was what you were supposed to do. Like that was
what we're supposed to do. Yes.
Show you working.
Well, if the code's written clean enough, it should describe itself, and you don't need the notes.
But like code could be written really clean, right? But like sometimes, like, isn't it possible that something can fall over for a reason that's nothing to do with the code? So it's just as a non-techie, that was the question for me. The other thing that, like, I know how Chris feels about Canvas apps, but like Diana and Oleksandr, I'd like your opinions. Canvas apps, yes or no?
I just want to before you guys say anything, I actually quite like Canvas apps. I just don't like Canvas apps that are terribly written, and that should be model-driven apps.
Right, because of the data backend, right? Yeah. So, like, has anybody here seen a fantastic Canvas app then? Like, that was so amazing, it blew them away. Silence.
I have intern. I have. There is several where Canvas fits, and that when they're separate to anything you're trying to do with your CRM, they're committing a business purpose, etc., etc. There's lots of ways, and you're using it in the right way. You're putting it on the mobile device and all those good things that it allows you to do very easily and quickly. It's when you're using Canvas for Canvas' sake, when you've got structured data, etc., and your users are at their desks, that you probably want to step back away from it. But there are, I've seen lots of different things that have opened up that world, and then, it's always going to be what the best tool for the job, and that's what most people don't understand, is that they'll go to Canvas app as their go-to when it should have been a model, and then they'll go to Dataverse when it should be SharePoint, for example. There is always a consideration about what the tool is you're going to use.
But like, when is the time that you've seen I'm struggling with the concept of Canvas app for Canvas app. Like, why would somebody use a Canvas app and not a model-driven app if, like, a Canvas app wasn't the way to go? Like, because it's not even easier. I don't like.
Funny. People don't like model-driven because you pay for Dataverse. People like Canvas because you can stick it on SharePoint. SharePoint's for free. It's all money. It's always, I don't know. Actually, great question, Diana, Oleksandr. When you guys are building stuff, does when you're writing code and things, do you ever get to the budget conversation with, like, oh, people are going to spend a shitload of money on you writing code and they can just write a Canvas app, but that'll do half the job?
Yeah, I think there are a few considerations. So first of all, with the model driven, you cannot do that fancy stuff that you can make with only pure model driven apps. And having connectors is also an important part. And also the license question. If you start with something, maybe you don't want to pay for the other license on top. But I think this problem is only for a moment, because we are going to converged app where you don't have to decide which kind of app you are making, and you can use the best of the both worlds.
Yeah.
Isn't the licensing changing around?
It's
always changing.
Yeah.
Always.
No, I mean, like, isn't it like something significant? I honestly, I just zone out when anyone says licensing. I can't.
So it's coming down from $10 to $5 and $40 to $20, but it's 6 of one and half dozen of the other. They could make it £1 and people would complain. The whole point is that Microsoft licensed on two things: connectivity and consumption. Okay, you can't argue with consumption because you're using something that you are going. It's like using fuel, right? Connectivity you can always complain about because you're connecting to another data source, and it's that gateway that you're paying for. To me, it doesn't matter. Like, people will bitch and complain no matter what you sell something as. They will find a way to do it, right? It's more about the fact that do what's technically right by your customers. And actually, both of you have raised a really great point. It's all down to the scenario when to use things like custom code. And it's always going to be based on what's best for the requirement, right? Sorry, I don't know how I switched that around. That was great.
You always did, but like Fraser dear, that's a nice name. Hello, Fraser dear. I felt quite mumsy saying that. Hello, Fraser dear. Fraser would like to know if we know when the convergence is planned. Do you mean like when things will change to like it being the same price for Canvas or model driven? Is that what you mean?
Oh, like the convergence of app types between model driven and Canvas. I mean,
dates.
About 10 years time.
I don't think they'll ever be munged together completely.
Munge. Well done for fitting in a quick munge.
No problem. It's what I'm here for.
Nicely done.
I have one quick question that I just want a really quick answer to before you kind of wrap up, Alison.
Yes.
For pro devs in the platform, what would be the one thing you want to see added to the platform?
Oh, good question.
Well, I would say tighter integration with Azure. Like they're already doing it, but already a lot of things that we are trying to do is in Azure, and it's not just natively with a Power Platform. So you need to find a hacky way to use it, which sometimes feels like unnecessary. Like it looks like it belongs to Power Platform, but it isn't, and you're like just okay, well.
Diana?
I agree with Oleksandr.
And Philip Cole says removal of Windows Workflow Foundation. Lols. So unless anybody would like to add anything involving ProDev, air fryers, or anything else that you might want to talk about, then all that remains is for us to say a massive thank you to Diana and Oleksandr for joining us. That was awesome. It certainly gave me some insight that I didn't have before this session. For the rest of you following, the contact details are in the chat box if you want to click on the links to follow either of these lovely people on Twitter or LinkedIn, or have a look at their blogs, which are, I'm obviously going to look at Dancing with CRM and see if Oleksandr's on there in any sparkly outfits. And I will fully expect some kind of vampire references on Diana's. Disappointing if they're not there. And next month, join us when we have Gustav Westerland and Leon Tribe. Correct, Carlos?
Yeah, we're doing a review of Wave 2, so bringing everything
Wave
to
2,
you from
Wave 2 Battle Royale.
Yes, from two very much legends or in their own lifetimes. So must have more MVPs than the rest of us put together, I think. So
nice. So thanks very much, guys. This was awesome. And if anybody wants to hang out and chat, we will stop recording, but leave the session open if you want to talk about popcorn or anything else, then please feel free. But thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Diana. Thank you, Oleksandr. This was awesome. And look forward to seeing you all next month. Bye-bye.